So if you're anything like me, then you have an unbelievably short attention span. It's always got to be moving to the next thing as quickly as possible, so I stop caring about this paragraph as soon as I open the door. I mean, the average human is only alive for 27,000 days, and that's nothing! There's so much to do, so much to see, so I gotta be sure I'm making the absolute most of this time. I don't have any time to look back at the past. In fact, I don't have any time to waste at all! That being said, let's talk about something from 17 years ago.
This is the Nintendo DS.
And the grass is green, the sun is hot, and I'm number 7 on the FBI's most wanted list. I'll be back with more obvious factoids in 4 months.
There are many people who don't recognize the DS. It's literally the best-selling handheld console of all time, and the maniacs that don't have at least one probably still recognize it. I mean, this thing was huge, and a big part of its success came from its accessibility to everyone. There was seemingly a game for everyone on the DS, and on top of that, it was easy to control for everyone. 2 whole screens, and I mean, humanity as a whole was pretty much building up to this. And not only that, but you could also touch the screens too! It only matters for one of them, but still! I think the bottom screen being touchscreen made the DS way more accessible and friendly for casual gamers. You don't need to worry about what the hell a Y button is when you can just touch the screen. And Nintendo really capitalized on the touchscreen too. Pretty much every DS game had some use for it, big or small as it may be.
And clearly that was the magic ingredient, because the DS ended up selling over 150 million units. Of course, now, that begs the question, 2 screens, one of which being a touchscreen, a microphone, a D-pad, and a couple other assorted buttons. What is the most logical game to put on this thing? If you said anything other than a 3D Mario game, you're wrong.
Alongside such classic launch titles as Asphalt Urban GT, Madden 05, and The Urbz Sims in the City came a remake of Super Mario 64, which is pretty monumental. The original game pretty much defined 3D gaming, so to see that on a handheld is super cool. Of course, as an 8-year-old, I didn't know any of this. I just saw a game with Yoshi in it and was immediately sold.
And that is many hours of my life I'm never getting back.
Nah, it's a great remake. I had a lot of fun with it. It is still Super Mario 64 after all, except now it's got a fresh coat of paint and there is so much new content here with 4 playable characters and 30 additional stars. And it also controls like ass. Yeah, unfortunately a fully 3D game with 360-degree movement like Mario 64 doesn't really work with the 8-directional movement of a D-pad. Now there is a workaround to this, however. You can use a touchscreen to move instead.
Yeah, that's not what I'm here for. You see, on top of the additional stars and characters, there's one more very important thing that Mario 64 DS adds. F***ing rabbits.
While you're running around Peach's castle, you'll occasionally run into these rabbits. They're pretty slippery, so you'll need to cut them off if you want to catch them, but if you do, you're given access to one of the best time wasters Nintendo's ever created. The Minigames.
And I spent a lot of time playing those things. They were super fun and super addictive, and they ended up becoming one of my favorite parts of the— Son of a bitch! And, they still hold up.
They don't really have all that much depth to them, but they were pretty creative showcases for the touchscreen and how the top and bottom screen could interact with each other. And as a little bonus unlockable to be something you could pop back into when you get bored of the main game, they were honestly fantastic. And some are definitely better than others, but there's also a lot of them and a lot of variety between them, so chances are you'll find at least one you'll sink countless hours into.
So I mean, we might as well go through all the minigames and rank them on a scale of 1 to 6. Now I know what you're going to say. Drew, you hate giving things number scores, what the hell? And while that may be true, is it really reviewing the Mario DS minigames if there's not some good old-fashioned hypocrisy involved?
The minigames are categorized by the 4 playable characters, although that's really just to give each character the same amount of rabbits to track down. I mean, there's some commonalities within each category, but there's no real overlapping themes, aside from one of them. So let's just get started going down the list, beginning with Wanted! Starting off real strong here, this is one of my absolute favorites. You're given a character to find and a sea of faces, and once you find them, you're given more time to keep playing. It's very simple, but it is very addictive, and it's also the only time I've said aloud,
"Where's Luigi? Where's that sick son of a bitch?"
I've never been able to do that before. Loves me! This is a coin flip with extra steps. You just pluck the petals off the flower until you get loves me or loves me not. This is completely unnecessary. Although I will say it's pretty funny seeing Yoshi sitting on a bridge wistfully plucking the petals off a flower. Also, the sound it makes when you lose is absolutely hilarious. Hide and boost seek. This one's just okay. You have boosts floating around and then the lights will turn off and you have to scribble the bottom screen to uncover them. It's not bad, but it's not really one of my favorites. Puzzle Panel is a pretty interesting puzzle game. You're given a set of tiles to flip over to create a specific design. The catch is that when you flip a tile, you also flip the tile surrounding it. It's not a bad game, but it doesn't really hold my attention like some of the others. Also, these Yoshi statues are really weird. They laugh at you when you lose and shoot off into space when you win, and I don't understand why. Boombox! You ever played Memory? Yeah. Except there's also a giant floating Mario head. Toy Box Shuffle! This is the classic hide a ball under a couple cups and mix them up to test your attention thing, except this time it's with Yoshis. Also, eventually, they throw even more Yoshis in and you have to find a specific one. Also, there's a giant floating Mario head.
Actually, yeah, what was Nintendo's obsession with dismembered floating Mario heads? Because this is not the first instance of it, and honestly, it creeps me out. Also, I think beheading is a form of murder, and I want to report this to the authorities.
Which Wiggler? Find the Wiggler on the bottom screen that matches the one on the top screen. Sometimes they sleep, sometimes they move. It's fine. Mix a mug. You stop the slot wheels, line up the character's face you're given, and this one's dumb. Puzzle Panic! Wait a second. It's just Puzzle Panel! Again! Yeah, except this time it's a slightly bigger grid, and it's the same game, so I would give it the same score, but I'm actually going to subtract a point for a lack of originality.
It's like different flavors of potato chips. You can make as many new flavors as you want, and some may even be better than the original, but at the end of the day, you're still copying the original.
Mario Slides! This is another fun one. Mario's head will move automatically down these paths, and it's your job to draw lines between them to make sure he gets to the star and not eaten by the piranha plants. Not bad at all. Bounce and Pounce. You have a bunch of Marios falling out of the sky, and your goal is to get them to bounce on these fly guys without falling through the bottom. You can tap on them to send them back up, and while you have some control over them by tapping to the left or right of them, it really just kind of feels random which direction they go, so you end up keep tapping on them until one just so happens to land where you want it to. Sword or Splow! This is another one of my favorites. You just have to move the black Bob-ombs into the black squares, and the red ones into the red squares. It's segregation at its finest. You can't put the Bob-ombs in the wrong squares, and if you wait too long to sort them, they'll explode, so it's all about quick thinking with this one. Again, not super complex, but it is very addicting.
I mean, I do have a side gig as a pyrotechnician, so that's probably why I like it so much.
Trampoline time! You have to draw trampolines on the bottom screen for the Marios to jump on so they can make it into the glowing door. It's fine. Shuffle Shell! It's curling. Bounce and Trounce, Hey, wait a second. This is just Bounce and Pounce with slightly more fly guys. What the hell?
I kill with the unoriginality. I tell you what, if I run into one more repeat minigame, I'm gonna scream.
Connect the characters. It's similar to Mario Slides where you have to drop between these paths, but I actually kind of prefer this one. Instead of the heads moving automatically, you're able to plan your moves ahead of time to make sure all the heads land on the right bodies. I like how there's a little more strategy involved with this one. It feels more calculated, which is appreciated considering how frantic and spur of the moment a lot of the other minigames are. Shell Smash! It's bowling. Kinda. Trampoline Terror! Stop me if you've heard this one before. Actually, I prefer this one to Trampoline Time, since in this, the targets are all over the place in the form of these rings, so it feels a little more freeform compared to guiding all the Marios into the same place. Bob-omb Squad! You got a bunch of Bob-ombs falling out of the sky, and so clearly the best way to deal with that is to hurl cannonballs out of a slingshot. This one's not too complex, but it is pretty satisfying to knock out a bunch of Bob-ombs in a single shot, and you can also hit a lag-2 to clear all the Bob-ombs off screen at once. It's pretty fun. Snowball Slalom. You just flick up on the screen a bunch to roll this snowball to the finish line while avoiding all the obstacles in 20 seconds or less. It's fine, but it's not my favorite thing ever. Bingo Ball. You ever played pinball? You ever played Plinko? You ever played bingo? Well, this is those three games in Probable Love Child. Moving on. Concentration has a bunch of coins fall into these blocks, and you simply have to remember where they landed. And this is a complete pushover. I have an unbelievably high concentration.
I'm never playing video games again.
Psych-Out has this giant floating card, and you just have to guess what's on the other side. And sometimes the opacity gets turned down a little bit, so it's easier to see, but sometimes it's just complete guessing. But in spite of that fact, I actually really like this one. It's probably because it's got such a chillax vibe to it. Like, I could fall asleep to this, which I can't say about most of these other minigames. Slot Shot! You ever played pinball? You ever played slots? Well, this is those two games slightly more probable of, child. Moving on. Lakitu Launch sucks. You just hurl balls into these baskets for 30 seconds and then the game ends. Every time I play this, I feel a year get taken off the end of my life. Intense Concentration. I don't even feel like I need to say anything. Giant Snowball Slalom.
No. Okay. What the f***? Why are there so many repeat minigames that are just slightly different or slightly harder versions of already existing minigames? I would get it. They were like different modes within a minigame, and I wouldn't even care if we still had to unlock them. But it's just so redundant that there are two of the same minigames multiple times over. I'm done. I'm not f***ing doing this. But it's okay, because I've saved the best set of minigames for last. Whoever came up with these at Nintendo is a genius, and I sincerely hope they got a raise. May I present to you Luigi Gambling? If you're wondering why I have a crippling gambling addiction, now you know who to point to.
These are just so much fun. I mean, on their own, they don't even seem that much better than any of the other games, but you throw gambling into the mix and ooh. Not to mention Luigi's looking spiffy as hell in his tuxedo, and you got this Toad walking around in the background with a drink tray in his hand. This is literally the best thing I've ever seen. Anyways, the games themselves. Memory Match. It's memory, but you can gamble on how well you think you're gonna do. Paragon. You just match pairs of cards that are directly vertical, horizontal, or diagonal from each other, but you can gamble on how well you think you're gonna do.
They're not even that fun. I just love having an outlet to make horrible financial decisions.
And then there's just straight up fucking poker, and it's essentially impossible to go wrong with poker. There's roulette too, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but I still 100% appreciate it being here. And I can't lie, it does still feel damn good to win. Slots too? I'm telling you, this is the best thing Nintendo's ever made. It's even a little more skill-based since you can stop the slots yourself. I'm not sure it actually does anything, but I'm going to consider it more skill-based anyways. I think Lucky Stars is hilarious because it's literally just a coin flip with gambling added. You want to pick the card with the higher number of stars on it, and it's just completely random if you get it or not, and I love it so much. There's Endless Paragon, which means you just play until you can't make pairs anymore, which also means there's no gambling involved. It is pretty relaxing though, and it is still pretty fun to go for a high score. There's also Memory Master, which is just Memory Match with more cards. Again, I feel like there could have just been a difficulty select within Memory Match. And rounding things out, we have Super Mario Slots. I'm not even sure what the difference is here.
Well, that was underwhelming.
You know, this is the last minigame you can unlock in the game. The rabbit with its key is on top of the roof of Peach's castle, which you can only get to if you've collected all 150 stars in the game, since doing so grants you access to a cannon that you can use to shoot yourself onto the roof. Or you could just use some creative platforming to get up. This jump took me an hour and a half to figure out how to do, by the way.
So the last minigame is kind of a disappointment. The fact that your reward for getting every single star in the game is just a slightly different version of Mario Slots is only a tiny bit frustrating. Couple that with the fact that I feel personally attacked by this damn jump and I needed an outlet for my rage. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to give Super Mario Slots. So those were the minigames in Super Mario 64 DS. However, those are only half the story.
May 15th, 2006 sees the release of New Super Mario Bros., marking the franchise's newest original 2D platformer in 14 years. Much like Mario 64 DS, I played the hell out of this game and thoroughly enjoyed it. The thing is, this game also has its own collection of mini-games in the same style as 64 DS, which means...
Round 2, baby!
Oh, wait a second. most of these are ported straight from 64DS. There are still a couple original games here, so let's go through those real quick. Danger Bob-omb Danger! This is all about guiding a Bob-omb around a bunch of fire-based obstacles for as long as possible. It's not bad at all, but there are definitely other Bob-omb based minigames I would rather play. Whack-a-mole! You ever heard of Whack-a-mole? Yeah. And finally, we have Balloon Racing, which is the only minigame out of the 39 we're looking at that uses the microphone. And you know what that means.
I did it! Now, as it turns out, there are a lot more original minigames in the multiplayer section, and as much as I would love to review those, I feel like we're going to quickly run into a problem there. So with that being said, those were the Super Mario DS minigames. And what a fascinating little collection they are. I'm not really sure what the reason for making these was. I mean, Mario 64 DS already had a lot of extra content without the minigames, and it already had pretty heavy touch controls too. I mean, they're definitely not the ideal way to play, and I don't think anyone actually played that way, but they were still there. There wasn't really a need for any touchscreen showcase tech demo thingies or whatever. But on the other hand, they were a lot of fun. They may not all be winners, but a good majority of them provide even a little bit of entertainment. They're just fun to revisit every once in a while, and it's really easy to get sucked back in once you start playing them again. They may not have been the most necessary additions to Super Mario 64 DS or New Super Mario Bros. Those are both plenty complete games without them, but that's not to say they weren't unwelcome additions. I guess it just goes to show that you don't really need a reason for doing something other than it's what you feel like doing. That being said, I feel like making pancakes. Where the hell did I put my blowtorch?